I've been a personal trainer for over 30 years and I've worked in 10 different countries. I've been lucky enough to work with Olympic gold medalists, Premier League footballers, many other title-winning professional athletes. However, I can honestly say my biggest privilege in my working life has been the opportunity to work with children. There is a Chinese saying that translates to, children are the future in miniature. And in a time when the world is changing faster than it ever has in our history, this saying rings truer than ever before. Now, of the many great children I've been lucky enough to work with, there are 3 in particular I'd like to tell you about. Let's call the first one Dave. He's from Massachusetts in the States, and I worked with him back in '99 when I was working out in Boston as a football coach. Dave was 7 years old at the time, cute as can be, beautiful kid, polite, well-mannered, great, but very shy. Now, this shyness concerned his parents, especially being from a culture where outspokenness is encouraged and shyness often seen as a sign of weakness. Thing was, they were quite shy themselves, so it just didn't come easy to Dave. So when working with Dave, we tried to build his self-assertiveness, but I didn't want him to lose that sense of humbleness that many shy people naturally possess. In effect, I didn't want him to turn into a Hollywoodized American. I could see early on he had the potential to be the strong silent type, and I didn't want him to lose that. So after the first few weeks of working with Dave, he did make good progress. He was becoming more confident, and this was rewarding, but it never come as a big surprise. What was a bit more surprising was the fact that his humbleness shone through despite only being 7 years old. And I think one of the reasons for this was because I was honest with him. I showed him respect by speaking to him like an adult and explaining why I want him to take certain steps. I could see early on, as with most shy people, that they are naturally introspective, perhaps even over-analytical, but I could see he had a self-awareness that could take honest assessment. We encouraged him not to be afraid to speak out loud, basics like holding your head up, keeping your back straight, and maintaining eye contact when talking. I paired the children up, one louder, more outspoken child with a quieter, less talkative one. Sent them off, give them something to discuss, and when we came back and discussed it in a group, it was always the shyer one who had to do the talking. Now, this seemed to empower the shyer kids, but it also taught the more outspoken ones to be a little bit more tempered. So, I also think this tactic, when working with Dave, he was introduced young to the concept that louder isn't necessarily better. He was taught to search out the opinions of the quieter, seemingly shyer people, who more often than not have more substantial things to say. So Dave, like all children I've worked with over the years, got praised on effort and levels of improvement. And when I gave that praise, how do you think I did it? Well, I mean, I was working in America with kids, so do you think I'd give him a high five? Or use words like, awesome. Got everyone together for a group hug? Of course not. I'm not American. A few years later, I was working in Taiwan at an international school in the capital, Taipei, and I worked with a 5-year-old who was a genius. Now, he has a Chinese name, so I'll try my best to pronounce it. It was Cyril. So Cyril was super cute, but most 5-year-olds are anywhere in the world. What set him aside from the others, the fact that he was exceptionally smart. He was a teacher's dream, good overall knowledge, keen to learn, absorb new information like a sponge, remembered it and applied it accordingly. Yeah, it was great. Now, his parents had worked in the States for a few years, so they were quite westernized. By Chinese standards, they were very outgoing, and this rubbed off on Cyril. He wasn't scared to give opinions, ask questions, and certainly not afraid to answer them. Now, over the first few weeks of the school term, he not only established himself as the smartest in the class, but in the whole school, which basically meant he was always the first to answer questions. This was intimidating the other kids, and they were afraid to attempt to answer. So, after giving it a bit of thought, I had a bit of a dilemma. So what I did, I spoke to his parents and I explained to them, the strategy I want to use is for him to sit quietly without answering any questions, but still listening and paying attention to all the answers given by all the other children. If no one else knew, I'd ask him. Now, his parents were quite apprehensive about this. They told me that previous teachers could never maintain his motivation to learn more, even though he was always the brightest in the class. But I saw it totally the opposite way. I knew it would be even more motivating for him to sit and pay attention to the others and what answers they're giving, so he wouldn't repeat the same answer, because him being the only one that knew the right answer would be his biggest motivation. I shown him respect by speaking to him like an adult and explaining the reasons why I wanted him to adopt this strategy, and that I think he's mature enough to understand and accept this tactic. He not only understood and accepted it, he thrived on it. So his parents are very satisfied. It's mainly because he's coming home all keen and motivated to learn more. They were asking me what my secret was. No one else has been able to do this before. What's your secret in terms of motivating him? So what do you think it was? What was my secret? Did I give him a Shisho Chi Jiao, Xinfon? Yeah, that's right. Mandarin for high five and awesome. Of course not. I'm not Taiwanese. I don't actually know Mandarin for group hug, but anyway, you get the point. I didn't do it. Before I elaborate on this secret, I'll tell you about the third boy in the story. He's a Swedish boy. Got a Swedish name. I'll try my best to pronounce it. Colin. Now, Colin was 12 years old when I started working with him. He plays for the ice hockey team that I work for in Sweden. He was a big boy for his age, biggest in the team, robust, assertive, the alpha male of the group. But I sensed early on he was just seeking attention. However, this quest for attention led him down the wrong path. He became one of the naughty kids, and inevitably, we ended up having a conflict. So, when this conflict arose, it resulted in him crying, having a tantrum, storming out of the class. So I carried on as if nothing had happened. Then the next day I was informed that Colin had ADHD and had recently suffered a big family trauma. So now I had a decision to make. Do I A, adjust for individuals, which in effect is going to lower your overall standard, or B, stand by my principles and enforce a minimum standard of hard work, focus and respect at all times? So, as no surprise to the people who know me, I decided on B. Now, I was lucky because my colleagues in the club I work for stood by me on my decision, and this resulted in us giving Colin an ultimatum, which included him being a lot more responsible for himself and his actions, in a sense, taking more ownership of himself and his behaviour. Despite only being 12 years old, he not only understood and accepted this, again, he thrived on it. Colin is in his late teens now and has matured into a confident young man, a lot more self-analytical now, and has greatly reduced his medication over the last few years. So how do you think I did it with Colin? What was my secret to motivating Colin? Did I give him a hug, fam? Or a hems, bra? Yeah, that's right. Swedish for high five and awesome. Of course not. I'm not Swedish. Let me tell you, with all three boys, this is how I did it. Now, with Dave in the States, a little shy 7-year-old needs to be more assertive. So, after getting lots of advice and lots of research, what I decided was, when I'm going to motivate him, I'll just give him a little nod and a little whisper, well done, and a little wink. But that's America. Taiwanese and American cultures are just so different. I knew for a fact nothing I'd like that I'd ever work in Taiwan. So with Cyril in Taiwan, after consulting lots of cultural experts, what I decided, instead of a nod and a whisper and a wink, I'd give a nod, then a wink, then a whisper. But with Colin in Sweden, I mean, this was a hard one. I mean, on medication for ADHD, I had to do some serious research with this. So after lots of deliberation, what I decided with him was, instead of a nod and a whisper and a wink, because, I mean, that'd only ever work in America. Or a nod, then a wink, then a whisper, because, I mean, that'd only ever work in Taiwan. What I decided was, yeah, I think a few of you got it already. I give a whisper, then a nod, then a wink, because, I mean, that's a very Swedish way of doing things. Okay. So with these three boys, although totally different cultures, different ages, different personalities, totally different ends of the spectrum, the same underlying philosophy was used in all three situations. Honesty with appraisals and accountability. Try to instill, or at least develop, accountability, which in effect is going to help to instill and develop the growth mindset as early as possible. Amongst the tactics used was no over-elaborate praise, no high fives, just a little nod, a little wink, an occasional, well done. You're trying really hard, well done. Now, I know we talk about touch and how important that is, but is a high five touch? Surely, a little pat on the shoulder, you're trying really hard today, I'm really proud of you. A little whisper in his ear. This kind of praise has a much more profound effect on people, certainly more so than what I call this superficial, Hollywoodized praise, high-fiving and awesomizing people. I mean, come on. When people learn to understand and accept this, it helps to cement a much stronger foundation. So this secret that I possess, it isn't anything scientific. It's just what I call integrity. Some people may call it honesty, but to me, they're just two sides of the same coin. Now, I know it sounds obvious when we say this. We assume all educators and parents will naturally do this. However, I've seen more and more that people would rather be liked than be respected. But I mean, when you think about it, it's obvious. Surely, you must know the answer. Well, I mean, there's no respect button on Facebook, is there? So what I've observed in different countries is a tendency for people to take the easy way out and give undeserved praise. Now, I know there's a bit of a grey area between honesty and honesty and criticism. Yeah. A certain amount of diplomacy is required. Of course, we all know that. This varies from person to person. But although honesty can initially instigate a negative reaction, in time, whether that's a day, a week, a month, or a generation, eventually he or she will reflect on it and respect you for trying to be honest. As long as you make it clear that your assessments are done out of kindness and you want them to be better, no problem. I remember some of my old school teachers being brutally honest with me. And yeah, I was quite hurt at the time. But in retrospect, I realised they were trying to help me, and I'll always respect that. What I've observed, more and more people just taking the easy way out. We can't have conflict. Let's just say it was great. So honesty is sort of slowly diminishing. Therefore, I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing accountability diminish at the same time, therefore integrity. So, let me conclude by imploring on you all, please, be more self-accountable. This will help you achieve higher standards and maintain them because you are maintaining integrity, therefore honesty. And this will lead to a better world because it will help to plant the seeds of a growth mindset in our children. And they deserve it. It's the best gift we can give them. The growth mindset is the best gift that anyone can have. Because let's not forget, they are the future in miniature. So let me remind you before I go, when you're giving praise, please give the un-Hollywoodized type. And by that I mean